Welcome to the Friday Power Lunch, a weekly show amplifying the voices of the Virginia grassroots. Each week, we provide engaging conversations about politics, culture, and women making change. Produced by the unstoppable women of Network Nova, our motto is, when we vote, we win. The Friday Power Lunch is recorded before a live Zoom audience. Follow us on social media. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and show us some love and become a sponsor through Patreon. The Friday Power Lunch. Badass women getting things done.
So again, I'm going to welcome you back. It is January 5th. I am Catherine White, your host, bringing you the guests, the issues, the action, fueling the grassroots community to get shit done. To get it done and get it and make it fun. So let's make sure that we're ready, get perked up to welcome our guest. Believe it or not, this is episode 4. This is season 4, episode 1. And at the end of this month, this is very exciting. It will be our 150th episode. That's pretty cool. Give yourself a hand, right? That's amazing. And today's theme is our eyes are wide open, insights and tools to combat the attack on democracy. So we're glad you're here because we have 2 guests that have firsthand experience around this. We have Denver Riggleman. Welcome the second time you've been with us. It's been about 2 years, but he will be here talking about his book, The Breach. But more importantly, he's going to give us some insights about this rise of Christian nationalism, his background. Remember, he served in the Air Force. He has a national security agency contractor. He runs his own business. He knows data and intel. And he also, I think, knows Bigfoot, but we'll talk to him about him later. But
I could talk about it. Hey, it's good to see. My dogs just went crazy. I don't know what's going on out there, so I apologize. When you said, "Hey, welcome Denver Riggleman," my dog started barking. So it's fantastic.
It could be aliens, Denver, but I'm going to say to you, we're going to say hi real quick, and then we're going to come back to you. But I hope you have, you're also, I love, known as a distiller, and that's what you like to be known as. So I'm so excited to talk to you. And do you have your rye in front of you or your bourbon? Or
I don't, sadly, not yet. Yeah, I mean, I could certainly make that happen, But if I open the door, I'm going to get attacked by dogs. But
okay.
But yeah, no, but I can make it happen. But no, it's great to be here.
Thank you so much. And we will be back. I can't wait. I know the audience came here to really learn about, that intel and data. And so we're excited. And then we are all equally, because we're activists and how we roll is, we know there's a lot of problems. This show, we want to make sure that we not only bring you the news, the issues, but we also do it in a way that's fun, makes you feel good, and makes you realize that it's up to us to do something. And we always deliver on that. So with that, we have Anat Shenker-Osorio, who will be here later, but it's not on right now. She, as you know her as a messaging expert, she's amazing. And we're going to talk about her Freedom Over Fascism Toolkit. Who knew? Who thought we would need a fascism toolkit? That's crazy, but that's where we are, folks. So I'm glad you're on the show today with us. So let's get to it. We always like to do show business. We're friendly, a supportive show. We love for you to use the chat. In fact, go in the chat right now. Tell us who you are, where you're from. And if you brought somebody as your +1 today, we ask people to bring a guest in. I know I asked my sister, Terry White, my other friend, Sally Williams, and like Romper Room, I hope you're in the room today. And so I hope if you brought a friend today, let us know who they are so we can give a shout out in the chat. So thank you for doing that. And also, be cool in the chat. If you're nasty, we'll kick your butt out. That's what we do. And lastly, well, not really lastly, but we are a Patreon subscription series. Throw us a few bucks, $5, $10, $25 a month. We so appreciate it. Our latest patron is Roxanne Lee. Thank you very much. That really helps us so much to invest in our work. We appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. And lastly, big news. We have over 2,000 people signed up for this particular podcast, but we like to get things clean. As we know, with trolls and anything, we need to clean up a little bit. So we're going to be having a new registration link. So you're going to have to register again. We're going to put it in the chat. Do it right now. Don't wait. Do it now. And we're going to remind you throughout the show to register. And so, yes. And lastly, I want to make sure that I give a shout out to Robin Warner, who's going to be doing an exclusive invitation only workshop about Zoom secrets. And because what we do, there's all kind of fun stuff in the background to learn about when you are doing this kind of program. Maybe you want to learn how to do it, right, Robin?
That's right. So you could send me an email and we'll get you trained and share our secrets. People wonder, how can we do all this in a live program? Well, it's a secret.
Yes, and if you're a patron, you'll probably even get special extra care. But we know what we've done a lot when we have done it for other programs, like we know how to add the fun in the games, and we know how to do different things. So we have a lot of lessons learned. Like one time we had a show with over 500 people, but our Zoom was only set at 100. We know that you've experienced that too. And then those are the kind of things that we'll be talking about. Okay, so thank you for being here. I hope that you're all warmed up, you danced in, and we're going to go up to our friend LUISA Boyarski, who's the leader of the Grassroots Coalition, to give us a grassroots update.
Fantastic.
Hello, LUISA. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Catherine.
Happy New Year. Yeah, you look good, rested.
Thank you. Thank you. You can't see the tan, but it's underneath all these layers. So I was in St. Croix for 10 days. Biden and I overlapped for about 24 hours,
Good.
Good times. But as you know, back in Virginia, we are getting ready for the General Assembly session. And we have met over the past month with more than 20 of our legislators, and they have told us it is going to be so important this year that we show up and we're heard on these bills that we want them to pass. They are really laser focused and committed to advancing their campaign promises and killing any bills that will reverse our progress in Virginia. But they can't do it alone. They are expecting a deluge of contacts from the other side on issues ranging from gun violence prevention to reproductive rights to you name it, education, right? We need to make sure that they are hearing from us too. Legislators said, look, it seems like you're spamming our email boxes, but so is the other side, and we need the numbers. We need to know what you would like us to vote on and in which way, so that when we do go to committee and we have these conversations, we can say legitimately, we have heard from constituents and they want us to support this bill, or they want us to vote against this bill. So we are going to be, as usual, issuing calls to action. And we really just want to say, please, please, please take the time to do them. Most of them are going to be so easy to send those emails. Most of the time, they're only going to be looking at the email to say, check, we know somebody wanted us to vote this way. So you don't have to worry too much about making it overly pretty. That being said, once the legislation is being considered in committee, we will want to make sure that we're testifying to support the legislation we want passed. So we will also be issuing calls to action to say, if you are willing to testify, and this is an issue you care about, or maybe you have a personal story that's related to this, please look out for those, because that is also really, really helpful when we're having those votes, to have more than just the person submitting the bill, hearing them, but it's helpful for people to hear from actual Virginia voters as well. So those are the two things that I wanted to share with you. It's really important that we're going to be heard. So those are two ways to do that from home, but we also want to encourage you to go to Richmond this year. And there are quite a few lobby days that are scheduled. The legislators are in a new building. They are excited to show it off, and they're going to be there, and they want to meet with us in person. We're excited that is, going to be a major focus this year. So I'm going to share in the chat a link to all of the lobby days that we already have planned, and links so you can sign up. You don't need to go to all of them, but again, maybe pick one or two where there are topics that are of particular interest to you. It's going to make a difference for our legislators to see Democratic supporters in their offices and on the Hill this year. And then finally, if you want to get a little bit more involved, we do have issue working groups that you can join. And I'm going to share those, the information on those groups in the chat and the individuals who are leading them. Those groups are going to be tracking the legislation. They're going to be working on the language for those calls to action. And usually it's the people who are members of those groups who end up doing the testifying on behalf of those bills. So if you haven't gotten involved in before, but you're really interested in a particular issue area this year, consider joining one of the working groups. You don't have to be one of the major players this year, but join those meetings, hear what's going on, and get a little bit more involved. So those are my calls to action as usual. And then of course, if you want to dive deeper, we will have our monthly meeting of the Virginia Grassroots Coalition on Sunday, January 7th at 6 p.m. And you can email me if you want to receive the Zoom link. I will put my email in the chat. And during that meeting, we're going to be discussing our legislative priorities, our strategies for the General Assembly session, and we have two guest speakers, Delegate Brianna Sewell, who's a candidate for Congressional District 7, and Delegate Dan Helmer, who's a candidate for Congressional District 10.
Was a long list of those folks, but yeah, thank you for that, Rita. I want to remind everybody too, we have a special election going on. The date is January 9th, and we have two Democrats running, Tina Younger in Senate District 9 and Melody Cartwright in House District 48. We're going to put in the chat. We have phone banks this weekend, and we know that Congresswoman McClellan will be running will be there as a special guest in one of those. So yes, what to do with your weekend in the snow is to make some phone calls, right?
Absolutely. Always a great way to spend your time on the couch.
Yes. Oh, yes, that's good. And also, I want to put a shout out for next week. We will be going down Network Nova. We will be in the House. Women will be in the House on opening day to celebrate all the work, because literally elections are about policy. And having Denver Riggleman here, a former congressperson, probably is delighted to know that people are participating in democracy at these legislative levels. So thank you for what your working group is doing. It's awesome. So thank you, Louisa. And yes. I mean, I've been sitting in on those legislative priorities. I'm going to tell you what, dedicated folks and really, really interesting bills. So I'm so grateful for that work. So thank you. So Fennell Norton, I am so excited. Happy New Year. How are you doing?
Happy New Year. I am doing just fine. I am so excited to be here. I know this is going to be a really, really, it's going to be a tough year, but eye-opening, but I'm ready. So are you ready? Because we've had some eye-opening things already, right?
Yeah, and I think what we wanted to get across today with our two guests that we talked about, I mean, what I'm really fascinated with and obsessed with almost, besides, Bigfoot with Denver Riggleman and his good bourbon and rye, is that the rise of Christian nationalism and what's happening in our country, and making sure that people know about what's going on, information, facts and information. In fact, the book that Denver wrote, The Breach, was trying to get at that with people. But you and I came to a conclusion that it really opened our eyes, which is, we know what we know, but that doesn't mean anybody else knows it.
Yeah, it's always this thing. It's like, I know what I know. I don't know what I don't know. And I think what's really interesting is that, we are always striving to figure out what we don't know, which is why we're always so curious about all of this stuff. And I think what we forget about is that there is this whole world outside of our bubble who have no idea what's going on through no fault of their own, because they're going on with life and what they're doing. And we just think that we say stuff or we message about things, and we just think everybody's supposed to know what we mean. But I always use my friends and my family and the people that I encounter as a gauge to open my eyes wide about what people know. And I think you got a really surprising quick story to tell about, about what people know.
I was enjoying my holiday, and I was sitting around reading the book, The Breach, on here it is. I have it here. I'll just do another shout out about it. Reading it, and I was laughing up from the couch. I'm like telling people some eye-opening moments from the book. Can you believe that Ginny Thomas, the wife of Clarence Thomas, doing this and that? And then I was like, Clarence Thomas, well, that's a Supreme Court people. Had all my nieces and nephews in the room. I go, hey, do you guys know who Clarence Thomas is? No, crickets. Oh, do you know who Neil Gorsuch is? Do you know who John Roberts is? I went down the line until they knew who Ruth Bader Ginsburg was, but I was like, shocked that none of these are 20-year-olds to 30-year-old, did not know or couldn't name a Supreme Court justice.
Yeah. I'm not surprised at all. I have my very own experiences about that. I mean, all kinds of stuff, and we sort of take it as like every day. And my husband always tells me when I'm really angry about something that I've seen or some type of flag or message, and I'm like, why isn't everybody screaming about this? And he goes, for now, 8 out of 10 people have no idea what that is.
Right.
And so that's why this is so important, because what our job is, and this is what Anat will do too, is to help us be able to take this stuff and synthesize it in ways that everyday folks like us can talk about it to our friends and family so that they get what it means to them personally. I love the story that I tell. Like someone says, well, democracy, we say it so much that it sort of like rolls over people's heads and they're just like, democracy. But if you really say, well, what does it mean to you? And I go, well, like some music I really don't like, some videos I really don't like. And I get to say that. And they get to do it. But if you don't have democracy, which is the freedom that we like, and that means that you don't get to do that. So if you like the music you like, if you want to say what you want to say, that's what you get to do when you live in a democracy. Yeah. And so that makes sense to some of the people that I hang out with, that they go, oh, well, that's worth fighting for. So
yeah, it's true. And it'd be interesting because I think what we're going to discover today, there is the logic around it, but what we're dealing with in this tribalism time, and also when you see this, I'll call it, for lack of a better word, a cult going on, to break through and out of that is difficult, to break into that bubble. And so I'd be interested when I talk to Denver about that, some insights, because facts matter, but when you talk to somebody about the facts, they just, if it's the QAnon conspiracies are there, it's really hard because they just move to the next thing. But then we know our work is really talking to our people, getting them out to vote, and changing the minds we can change. So I do want, before we leave today to go to Denver, I want to talk about some New Year's resolutions, because folks in this room from all over, I was loving that our people were coming out, the indivisible Ezra Klein telling about his New Year's resolutions, Simon Rosenberg, Jess Cravens from Chopwood, Carrie Water, and they were really all saying the same thing. I will do everything that I'm able to do to help save democracy.
Yeah, I love that. And folks are probably not privy to all of the conversations that we have, but Robin sent me Jess Cravens, and I looked at it and it sort of brought me to tears, because it really is about doing what you can do. It's something. And if everybody does something, then there are way more of us than them. And I also love the way Steve Phillips talked about it in Democracy in Color. And the whole point is, do you want to live in a January 5th world, or do you want to live in a January 6th world? And if you want to live in January 5th, you want to live in a place where there's justice, where there's truth, and it's freedom. That's where you want to be. So I think that's a wonderful way to help people see.
Wrap it up. And I think,
and today is January 5th. So this is
I know. And I think when she said educate, agitate, organize, and also imagine, and I think it's really great to imagine too, and being in the positive, imagine being in that winning spirit, and trying to do something, every day, take a little action. That's exactly how we will win. And I just appreciate those kind of sentiments, because that's how we have to be. I know in this room, people are fighting for this every day, and you're not alone. And the Power Lunch, this is a great place to land every Friday in community with calls to action. And like I said, we're going to be taking on a national bent this year in our 4th season, and we'll be working with other groups, and that's going to be super duper powerful. So
it will show the power of the grassroots.
That's right.
All across the country, everywhere. We are everywhere from the ground up, spreading the word.
Small steps that we take will pay big dividends in the months to come. So let's get started. I'm excited to bring up, if we can now, Denver Riggleman. Welcome, Denver. How are you feeling? Already in the room with a bunch of just amazing democracy warriors.
I feel great. I feel great. Yeah, you were talking about badass women at the beginning, and I'm married to one, and have three daughters that are badass women. But when you have a wife and daughter that are master distillers and make the best bourbon in the world, that's pretty cool. And and honey rye and rum and gin and vodka. So,
Well,
I'm
people
pretty
may
happy.
not know your background, so let's start there. I mean, we knew you back in 2019, you stepped up to run for Congress. Before that, I think you ran for governor against Corey Stewart.
Oh yeah, that didn't go real well. The far right didn't like me very much then.
Yeah, that
That
was a
was
signal that wasn't there. It must an
oh
early signal things were going wrong,
yeah.
going
Even as running as a Republican, the death threats started when I went out against Corey Stewart because remember I had done a video where I said, people might want to not want to tear down statues, but we need to add context because we need to be comfortable with slavery. I don't know if 2018 or 2017, that was my first time ever in politics, by the way.
Right.
By the way, you probably don't want to jump right into a governor's race when you barely voted your entire life. But anyway, so was doing a lot of military stuff. But yeah, when I came out and said that we should actually have some type of contextual base, on what was happening, with the
Right.
Robert E. Lee statue in Charlottesville, I got my face torn off. And I think that's when I started to realize that
Something was wrong.
is there that many crazy people? And then, of course, when I ran for Congress, the disinformation was then as I was a secret Democrat already, because I thought that we should add context to historical monuments. But by the time, then I got hit by the far left, as you remember,
Right.
when I got hit with Bigfoot erotica, because somebody put my picture on a Bigfoot with
Leslie Coburn. Yeah.
and that was the book. This is the book, The Breach is a bestseller, but this is the book Hollywood this year. Looks like I might have a show. But this is
I
the
love
book,
it.
yeah, Bigfoot, It's Complicated, which was about how myth and belief systems overcome and destroy people's lives, or, capture them, which is really similar to the people who actually sacked the Capitol on January 6th, right? So, yeah, so it was a book about disinformation. So I've been hit by disinformation from the far right, the far left. I've had a great time.
You're a regular guy, and when I really enjoyed reading the book. One, would get to know you a little better. I mean, your background, you served in the Air Force. People may not know you have a strong background in security, data analysis and now you have your own company, but you're all about the data. You understand, you do intel work, sent out to many war places like Afghanistan. So when you got called onto this committee and this commission, you had experience and background that maybe some people didn't really know. But also, I think what makes you really unique in your lens is that you are a guy from Manassas. You grew up in a household that I had no clue that your family converted to Mormonism. And already, you're in this area. So your family and friends, where they live, what they feel like. So you have a unique perspective that I think other people that may write books on January 6th or look at what's going on, you're right in it and you lived it. And you are obviously able to get outside of that bubble and see on the higher ground, look at what was going on. So I feel like that gives you really a unique view. So let's just get started with that. This batshit crazy stuff going on, as you said, wasn't new. But I think what startled me about it too was when you remember that old movie where the call was coming from the attic where the babysitter was babysitting and she's getting all those crazy calls and they realize the crazy person's in the attic. You were able to trace these calls back into the White House. And let's talk about some of this stuff you found and then why is it relevant today and what do we need to know about it that will kind of help us?
What should scare people? A lot of that stuff sort of got swept under the rug. I don't know if it was on purpose or accident, but there's an old saying in the military, right? If you get shot on purpose or shot on accident, you're still getting shot. Right. But what we found was there were multiple White House numbers that were being called. And for people on this, on this chat, there's three basic root numbers, 395-881 and 456, right? That's in the actual White House. And we can track those numbers in our call detail records. We had over 30 million lines of data. So what we found was that, the White House or a call from the White House through the switchboard hit a rioter at 4:34 p.m. on that day. We also know that people like Bianca Garcia, Latinos for Trump, was actually in contact with White House phone numbers and cell numbers. And we also know that an Oath Keeper was texting with Andrew Giuliani when he worked for President Trump. And that was in November, December of 2020. A lot of that stuff hasn't come out because it's too scary, number one. Number two, the data, I would say the data procedures and the wiping of data is so prevalent when you leave office. You had this whole transition where we lost so much data. The American people have no idea. I don't think how close we were because of the massive coordination that was going on between White House individuals, rally planners, and even White House staff that was in direct communication. Guys, I'm not talking about second or third order. I'm not talking about one, then, oh, they're there. Direct communication with an oath keeper to the son of Rudy Giuliani at the time he was working for Donald Trump. Those things are real. They're data proven. They're 100%. That is facts based. So they learned a lot of lessons. January 6th to me was always been a test run. It could be used as a test run, but for me to say this was just a rally gone bad is sort of ludicrous. I mean, we're to a point now, we're beyond that. But again, I would say fully 40% of the American public do believe it's a rally gone bad. Maybe 15% don't care. So we're in a bit of an issue. We're in a bit of trouble in 2024, I think.
We're in a bit of trouble. Yes, it's true. And I think that was again, when you talk about eye-opening moments, and I think going into this anniversary, or we want to call it, it's sort of like even the 9/11, looking at all this intel that's gone wrong, and you can see what can happen when you're not paying attention, right? And that's what worries me when we're up and coming. What we can't see and what we don't know is always scary. And like you said, the wiping of the data seems such like a missed opportunity, so much data, and the people not really still out there, like Flynn, Bannon, still operating, Roger Stone. We can go all day on that. But what I'd like to go into with the time we do have here is what we can do about it, one. And two, what I think it's coming at us that's not known is a lot of this rise, what Rick Wilson called the MAGA church. I mean, this evangelical wing, which I think you'd have a really interesting perspective on, because you've kind of lived in that world, and how you break out of it seems to be really important. And I don't know how do we handle that? When we see this scary intersection of theocracy coming at us. I mean, what's your insights on what's happening there and how they're using this to control, lack of a better word, control people?
I knew that Christian nationalism was an issue. I didn't know how much until July of 2019, after I officiated the same-sex wedding. Right. I don't know if everybody on this show understands. You're also interviewing the tool of the Antichrist. I just want everybody to know. Yeah, I was also called the general of the Sodomite armies, which was pretty original. I was called in the pejorative a secret Jew. I was part of the ZOG, the Zionist Organizational Government. I didn't know if you guys knew that. I'm one of the globalists that were actually paid by George Soros. Also, my wife was accused
kids'
of
blood. Yeah.
Oh, well, I mean, it's delicious. And then, of course, then you have, George Soros. I don't know if you guys know this. I was accused of laundering money for George Soros to our whiskey distilleries. My wife was. She was also called the spawn of Satan, which means, honestly, with me being the tool of the Antichrist and her being the spawn of Satan, we're probably the biggest power couple in the United States. Yeah. So there's a lot of things that we went with. But when you talk about how I was raised, you do know in the book, a painful portion was much of my family really dislikes and hates me now based on my fact I went against Trump. And also when you talk about Christian nationalism, I hope everybody's paying attention. I hope everybody knows what New Apostolic Reformation is, the NAR. I hope everybody is looking up UIP, Unified in Purpose. I hope you're looking up the ZIKLAG, ZIKLAG. I hope you're studying Seven Mountains Dominionism. I hope you're looking at the Paula Whites and the Julie Greens and the Greg Locks. I hope that everybody on this call goes right now, looks up NAR, New Apostolic Reformation, and I hope every single person on here is following the Reawaken tours by Mike Flynn, where Eric Trump jumps in there and things like that. So I've probably forgotten more than about Christian nationalism than most people know, based on the way I was also raised. Right. Being raised in that way. And if you look at, the breakdown of religious groups that believe in QAnon or some of these conspiracy theories, it's actually quite disturbing. You're talking about there's religious populations in the 20 to 40% based on what, where they're at, that they actually believe in QAnon. So, and you can break that down from Catholics, Protestants, Mormons, right, and go down the line. So anyhow, again, Christian nationalism, I think, and I do mention it in the book, I think it's one of those threats where it's obviously not all Christians, but it's definitely rising, and there's a violence to it where it's almost Jesus with a machine gun out there. Right. And I think people should be worried about that.
Yeah, exactly. Just how you put it. Well, it is something that I feel like one thing about your story and the takeaway that I'm thinking is how you were able you were able to get out of that, not only because your wife was somebody who was a great partner and was able to guide you, but that you left the area, went to the Air Force, you got exposed to other things, other people, and education. I think those are two big things. And what we see are people living in their bubbles, being with their tribe, so how do we bust that bubble? I mean, we could spend probably another show on that, but any last minute takeaways, I know about what you think, I don't know, for this next year, for this election, that we can do. Like you said, we can look all this stuff up, but in the sense of your own, your own struggles with this, even be able to talk to your family. What do you think is some like a major takeaway you can leave people with? I know that's a big deal.
I think I can wrap it up into one ad on True Social, and that's where Trump self-identifies as a prophet now, and that ad came out today. So I think what people need to do, everybody's like, well, don't retweet it, right? Don't put it on any other social media platforms. Let it rest. What's going to be out there anyway, because the news is going to report on it. Yeah. Mainstream media really is also giving a lot of oxygen to this because it does get clicks and it drives money.
Right.
I honestly think if you want to see what's going to happen in 2024, just watch that ad. That's really all you need to do. You need to internalize it, because what you're going to do is you're going to run into people that you cannot argue with. I would say that we're only looking at maybe we can do 3 to 5% of the American public we can turn. This election is going to be brutally close, razor thin. It is going to be about voting and things like that. But what you're going to have to watch, you're going to have to watch your six. You're going to have to watch your backs.
Yeah.
Right. Is that facts might not get in the way of individuals' actions when it comes to things like God is telling me to do this, or your facts don't matter because my faith is telling me that you're trying to destroy our country. But again, and watching, I would say it because I know you have such a great show, is to watch that ad on True Social, internalize that, and know that's what's coming in 2024.
Yeah, and I think that what working with people like yourself and people in the different parts of the parties, that we have to also widen our ability to work together. And that's why we're doing more work collectively and also collaborating with different groups. And I think, Lincoln Project, all these different former Republicans, they're Americans. We're fighting for our country, for democracy. So I appreciate what you're doing and in this space, and good luck today when you're out there talking to everybody. I think people need to know what's coming at us. And I'm excited that we also will have a toolkit today. We're going to talk about, when we talked to Anat Shenker-Osorio about, as activists, how we can actually talk about this also when we're messaging out there to people. So thank you so much, Denver. It's always great to see you. And for those who haven't, get the book, and The Breach, was a good read.
And I do want to say, I see all the questions coming up on the right. They're incredible questions. I would love to address some of that. So if you ever want me back just to address questions on all the efforts that I'm looking on the right, I'm happy to do it.
Well, yeah, and I know you are on Midas Touch later and all that. If you want to log back in, after 1 o'clock, we have an after chat, and we'll be here still. So if you want to pop back in, you have more time, we can definitely tackle some of those.
I could try today, and you guys know my schedule today is 5 TV podcasts. It's a lot of fun, Yeah,
I know. Well, it's a day coming at us, and I'm glad we addressed it with you. And like I said, there's so much I want to talk about. I still have other questions myself. So thank you, Denver. We will have you back, no doubt. So have a great day. So I want to make sure, Robin, if we're ready to roll with, where's Fennell? So that was great. Let's roll some Green Day. Let's go. This is for Denver and for everybody. Let's go.
Well, maybe I'm the America. I'm not a part of the MAGA agenda. Everybody to the Republican. I say hello to the age of paranoia.
Welcome to a new kind of tension, all across alien nation. Oh my gosh.
I know, it's pretty exciting, right? But before we move on, I do want to give a shout out to Kathy Snyder, who brought her entire Democratic committee with her executive committee, and Regina, Peggy, and Carolyn. So Kathy, thank you. That's the big +1. That's the whole army.
I thought it's great. And it was very exciting. I know that I could, there's so much I wanted to really, I could talk to Denver all day about some of these things even happening today, because some big news came out today. We saw the poll where 39% of Republicans still believe this crap. We also see these Army colonels and people that were involved and didn't act when the riot was happening. And there's so much here, but we also know that we can't get overwhelmed by this. We have to stay in our work. We have to stay focused and use and message and talk to people and see what we can do to move people along. So that's why we have not. Is it not here yet?
Yeah, and that is here. And
good.
And I was
Let's get started.
Yeah, I was going to say, this brings us right back to how we started in terms of what you're going to do this year. It's easy to feel overwhelmed, but you got to work on the things that you can control and what you can do. Anat, welcome. I'm so excited to have you here today. This is fantastic. I should tell you, though you probably don't want to hear it, that I've been to just about every single one of your webinars. So there you go. But for those of us who might just be joining, this is Anat Shenker-Osorio, who is a messaging expert, and she is the founder and principal of ASO Communications and the Words to Win By podcast. And she'll be launching the brand new one on January 16th, season 3. And what I also want to say about this is we talk about messaging all the time, and people complain about the way that Democrats message all the time, but we think we do pretty good. So I am anxious for everybody to hear it, all the naysayers. So Anat, give it to us straight.
All right. Thank you for having me. I'm going to attempt the impossible and pack basically 3 different things into 15 minutes. So if you feel like it's going by fast, it is, but there's a recording. So I'm going to start where Denver left off, because of course this is an incredibly critical topic. What I'm going to do is offer you hot off the presses research that we completed right at the end of last year around white Christian nationalism. We've been spending a lot of time, myself and my colleagues at something called the Research Collaborative, trying to really dig into how do we encapsulate the MAGA threat effectively to voters in a way that's quick, that's resonant, that feels not just like a condemnation for the sake of being against them, but rather feels viscerally true and really important and dangerous. And so we have tried different permutations of authoritarianism and fascism, and we continue in that direction. But we were also really curious, not just like, is white Christian nationalism happening, but rather, what is the public perception of it already? And so we offered folks in a survey that we ran in December a pretty damning definition polling. We did not invent this out of our own. We actually took it from PRRI's definitions around white Christian nationalism. We took things that the majority of people who identify as white Christian nationals agree with, and that definition is down at the bottom in small text. You will get these slides. Basically, it's an ideology where the majority of believers hold that true patriots might have to resort to violence to save our country. Immigrants are deliberately replacing white Americans. Jewish people hold too much power. Muslim people should be prohibited from entering. It includes support for Christian prayer in school, encouraging wives to submit to their husbands, condemning homosexuality, opposing contraception, abortion, and sex education. So people in the survey read that definition. We then asked them, many Republican leaders in Congress and state legislatures support policies that others have described as white Christian nationalists. How does this make you feel? And what you can see is that this is pretty darn damning, not surprising that it is among the Democrats, but look at those independents, and even 20% of Republicans, only 7% with a lot of heat, but still. So this is a concept and an idea that is helpfully repugnant to people. I guess that's somewhat reassuring. But the operative question is really, are people just thinking, well, that sounds bad, but luckily no one actually thinks that, so who cares? After people had heard that definition and answered that question, we asked, what percentage of politicians in the Republican Party would you say are white Christian nationalists? And I think that this is pretty astounding to me personally as a researcher, that after hearing that definition, so they're not getting like a soft pedaled, I don't know, what's a white Christian nationalist? Is it somebody who's just really obsessed with the white Christmas song? We just told them that it's a pretty, strident kind of a thing. And these are the numbers in terms of people's perception of how much it's already within the Republican Party. Pretty surprising, at least to me. We're going to continue in this data vein again toward the impetus of, is this the most compelling, effective, credible way to really explain to voters who are perhaps not dialed in or on the fence what is going on here versus explaining it through some other means. So from data to what we do about it. In order to go forward, it's often really instructive and helpful to move backwards. Something I like to remind folks all the time is that I would rather win elections than polls. Every time you see new polls and you start having heart attacks about them, I want you to remind yourself that there's actually only one poll that matters, and it's the election.
There's only one poll that matters. There's only one poll that matters. Okay, got it.
So let's just spend half a second, a beat, relative to what it deserves on the 22 midterms. We were told, we always get told, that we need to meet voters where they were, where they are, and where they always are. I can't believe we keep asking this question. It literally never needs to be asked again. You ask voters anywhere, not just in America, but the world, what is your number one issue? And I promise that they will say the economy. They also like ice cream and back rubs. We don't need to keep asking people this question. It's always going to be their answer. And so we take from that answer, oh no, people's top issue is the economy, which again, I'm not discounting. I hope you hear that. They will always register that as the top of their issue preferences. We interpret that to mean we need to talk to them about the economy, which is a fundamental lack of recognition that the job of a good message is not to say what is popular. The job of a good message is to make popular what we need said. If you want to win the debate, you must first decide what the debate is going to be about. And yes, we can gnash our teeth and hand-wring about the chasm between what's actually going on with the economy and voters' perception of it. That's a tale for another moment. But the reality is that we win when we debate on our own terms. So in 22, don't focus on January 6th. Don't have hearings. Voters don't care about this. They're not interested. It's the bottom of their list of priorities. Democrats, committee, if you pursue this, you're just going to piss voters off. And a lot of hand-wringing that this was going to make Democrats look out of touch. This is just some examples. Hand-wringing, believe it or not, even in the immediate aftermath of the Dobbs decision. You can't run on abortion. You can't run on abortion. It's too divisive. We need to be a big tent. We need to be a party that encompasses everybody. Call it the A word. Even after the leak, even after the actual decision. Luckily, many of us ignored that advice, and we engaged in a giant research project over the summer that we came to call Protect Our Freedoms. What we learned over the course of testing 200 ads through randomized controlled trials is that there were certain messaging principles that really rose to the top. The first and perhaps most important is that we had to cast the election as a crossroads, an antagonist-protagonist relationship, listen closely, between the antagonists, which were Trump Republicans or MAGA Republicans, white Christian nationalist Republicans, want to take us backwards and control our lives. Can't emphasize enough how much they want to control us and decide our future for us is popping for voters. They understand it. They don't like it. It is a clear way of explaining. They want to take us backwards, control our lives, and rule only for the wealthiest few. We do bring in the economic dimension. And the protagonists who notice are the voters, not the Democrats. First, because it's very hard to convince people that Democrats are coming to save you. They don't buy it. And because even if they did buy it, the purpose of the message is to induce action out of the audience. And so you have to make the audience the protagonists in the tale. So have to have a contrast storyline. The two actors, the two protagonist antagonists, are the MAGA Republicans and the voters. Those are the two main characters in the story. Have to use abortion as a salient exemplar, because when we point to abortion, as you'll see in an ad I'm about to show you, it makes the rest of our claims that they are coming to take away our freedoms and rule over, not represent us. It no longer sounds like the boy who cried wolf or the Democrat who cried wolf. It's like, oh yeah, that seems plausible. You use that as an example to say the rest of the agenda. You make the voter the agent, as I said. So here's an example of doing just that in an ad that we ran in 2022, which you will see features, of course, January 6th.
Which side are you on? Americans who believe liberty and justice are for all? Or traitors inciting violence against our country and trying to take away our freedoms? Which side are you on? People who work for a living and care for our families? Or the Trump Republicans who block everything our families need? This November, it's time to show which side you're on. Vote for Democrats. FFPAC is responsible for the content of this ad.
So again, it's time to show which side you're on, not it's time for Democrats to come and save the day. We also found, as maybe you have noticed, that we had to make freedom focal. Freedom is the #1 value that Americans across races, across places, across ages, you name the demographic, associate with the United States. This is simply one example. It's true in any poll. You say, what value do you most closely associate with the US? It will be freedom. The right has made believe that that's their value, but I would remind you that freedom has been integral to progressive wins across our history, from FDR's four freedoms, Freedom Summer, Freedom Riders, Martin Luther King famously saying, free at last, thank God Almighty, and of course, more recently, the freedom to marry, which was a deliberate frame flip from the right to marry. This is an example of freedoms in the field. We pushed out this messaging in every channel possible, and you can see it's everyone from Abigail Spangenberger to Lucy McBath, people who are not in the exact same spot on the ideological spectrum. What we found is that this worked. This was from a public poll conducted in September. What's at stake in the congressional elections? In a normal election, the #1 thing people will say is at stake is something financial, because again, that is always going to be their top concern. The fact of displacing the electoral choice is task #1 in winning the election. You have to set the terms for people. This election is about, are you going to keep your freedom, or are they going to take it away? Are you going to control what happens in your future, or are a handful of MAGA Republicans going to decide for you who you can be, what you can do, what your kids can learn, and who you can love? That brings us to January 6th, the anniversary, of course, tomorrow. This message, which you will get, is all about making clear that January 6th is not just the act of a bunch of foot soldiers, nor is it solely the responsibility of one Donald Trump and an administration that is no longer in power. It is absolutely essential that we extend the net of culpability to the entire cabal of them and make clear that what was done that day is part and parcel of their broader agenda. In America, anyone running to represent us must respect that we, the people, decide. But MAGA Republicans engaged in a criminal conspiracy. Criminal conspiracy is a very deliberate term. It's the most effective way to characterize what that was, what they're up to overthrow the will of the people, overthrow instead of overturn, deliberate choice. After declaring their intent to reject the results, I'm not going to read the rest of this. You will get it. MAGA Republicans made one last-ditch attempt to seize and hold power by promoting, paying for, and pardoning. That's how we rope in all of them, not just Trump. Promoting, paying for, and pardoning the attack on our country, etc. There's a bunch of stuff we need to do. A bunch of stuff doesn't help us to do. I'll make sure that you get this. Because where I want to leave us is perhaps with a little shot of, yes, we fucking can. Sorry, I didn't ask if I could swear, and now I just did. So we are subjected on the daily to what I call the horse race men of the apocalypse. This is my little joke, horsemen of the apocalypse. I don't need to tell you, right? There's polling all the time. Lots of it, weirdly, is national. I don't know who these people are who think we live in a country where we have a national election. That'd be nice. That would require that the popular vote actually has meaning, and states like yours and states like mine actually have a say. Ha ha ha. First of all, if you're looking at national polling, I don't know where you live, but it's irrelevant. Only battleground state polling has any relevancy. The next thing to note about a lot of those polls is that without exception, they are always within the margin of error. The difference between Trump and Biden in those polls is within the margin of error. And as my frequent colleague, Michael Podhorzer, brilliantly says, if it's in the margin of error, it's in the margin of effort. Because when people are answering a survey today or last month or the month before that about their predicted future behavior 13 months, 12 months, 11 months from now, I can assure you they cannot predict what they want for dinner tomorrow, let alone what they plan to do in November. Human beings are famously poor predictors of our own future behavior. And the most vital part of this is that what really every election comes down to in these battleground states is turnout. In 2022, the reason we were able to dam the red wave is because in the 15 states where Democrats won, turnout was at 2018 levels, which was historic, rendering it more historic because it was an incumbent year. It was a smash, boom, bang turnout in the 15 states Democrats won. In the 35 states where they did not, turnout was, as everyone predicted, up for Team Red, down for Team Blue, which is what you would expect when you're in the incumbency. We win when we turn out. And so in these surveys, you're asking people to predict not who they're going to vote for, but whether they're going to vote. Because remember, in any survey, 90 to 95% of people say they're going to vote. Do we have 90% turnout in America? So that means the majority of those people are incorrect in that assessment. So the task at hand is really, what do we need to say to them between now and then in order to ensure that they actually do go and vote? Right now, as you just heard, there's lots of negative information around how many people believe the big lie, how many people have been discounting January 6th. But what is out of sight is out of mind. And right now, the media is covering, nobody likes Joe Biden, he's down, people don't like him. That then creates the social proof that people don't like him. When you look at those same polls down below, where they ask a question around the impact of Trump's conviction, we just finished an op-ed in the New York Times around looking at that. I think now it's been 12 different polls, like every single one we could find that asked a question around Trump's conviction. When you ask people, if Trump were convicted and sentenced to prison, still the nominee, would you vote for him? Their answers change to a degree that absolutely swings the election. Plus 10 when the margin of error, when in these battleground state polls, it's, +2 Trump or +1 Trump or +1 Biden, somewhere in there. These are margins that absolutely will swing the race, and we see that in every single poll. When Trump's conviction, when Trump's trials are what is in the media constantly, just like when the January 6th committee was live and actually meeting and actually showing evidence, and that was what was on TV, it alters people's calculus because they have a different thing top of mind. I'm leaving off with a little post-holiday gift for you, a New Year's gift. We asked this question: if found guilty, what length of prison sentence would be appropriate for Trump's crimes? 75% of the people answering said some prison. including 49% of Republicans. And you can see on the right-hand side, the mean length of the sentence. All of these, given Trump's age and his health, are life sentences. We so didn't believe this outcome. This seemed so incredible to us that we reran this 4 times with 2 different pollsters and replicated the results within 1 percentage point every single time. Again, to say, the media environment, what we message, the things that we choose to say as messengers alters the way that people view what the electoral contest is, and that's really our job. We have for you, as always, a toolkit. We update it regularly. We updated it today with new guidance on how to talk about ballot removal in Maine and Colorado, an updated anniversary of January 6th message. We put it at a bit.ly so it's easy to find, freedom over fascism. There's GIFs, there's memes, there's messaging advice, and would be remiss not to thank all of the many colleagues who form part of the research collaborative to make all this research possible and get it out.
Yeah,
this has been fantastic, Anat. So let me just say a couple of things. I saw lots of things happening in the chat, and people are really loving this. So the point is that your information is in there for all of the research that happens with the collaborative and the webinars that happen. And as I said, I don't miss them. I have every single thing that you've ever done. That's why I'm a messaging expert, self-taught from the School of Anat. But what I would say is that this is the kinds of tools that we want to make sure that everybody has in their hands. And so you can stop saying that we can't message, because we can. And I know that one of the things that you say is it should be clear, concise, and visible language. People ought to be able to see themselves in the story. And if your words don't spread, then they don't work. But I do want to take a minute and have you talk about, since we talked about white Christian nationalism, you talked about creating cognitive dissonance. So can you just talk for a minute about people having that conversation, what that might sound like?
Yeah. When we're talking to people, and I'm sorry about going over, when we're talking to people who actually are susceptible to this belief, or who, they're flirting with it. So I want to be clear, I'm talking about that population when I talk about this cognitive dissonance point. It has never worked ever to say to someone, all that stuff you believe, what the fuck are you thinking? Like, if that was going to work, I think no one would ever get divorced, right? So right. That's not a way to talk to other people. It's not going to work. It's not a way to parent. It's not a way to be in relationship. When a person is susceptible to these kinds of beliefs, what you want to do is create cognitive dissonance in order to ideally make them come to the conclusion themselves. And so what that would sound like is saying, that's interesting. I just heard you say, I'm making this up, your pastor said that, America was specifically designated by God and Jesus as a land for, white Christian, whatever they've just said to you, or your pastor just said to you, or you're saying that you really do think it makes sense that a man must have dominion over the household and like a wife must submit, whatever they're saying. And I've also heard you talk about how when you were growing up, your mom was really sort of the heart and soul of your family, and she was the one that kept you all together. You want to point to 2 different things. That could be something from Jesus's teachings. It could be something of them from their life. It could be some other belief that that they hold. And then you say those 2 things. And you say, oh, interesting. And that's it. You don't say, you're contradicting yourself, or you're making no sense, or listen to you. That's illogical. You just simply say, oh, I heard you say this, and then I heard you say that, or I heard you say this, and then I remember learning about Jesus teaching XYZ, and then you're quiet.
Yeah, that silence gets them. Okay, so it gets them. I love that, because I think that everyone has had those conversations, and one of the things that I do is I just say, oh, well, why do you think that? And then I just say, why is that? And then usually they why themselves right out to, it doesn't make any sense. And I just leave it there. So thank you, Anat. Catherine, yes. I know you want to say something to Anat because.
Well, thank you is a big thing I want to say, and Happy New Year, because I have to say I sat here just mesmerized and fascinated because it's exactly what we need, because we know it's from Denver's book and from some of his research in the data and what we can see even in the papers today is there's a lot there. So it's great that we leave our show and our activists with actual tools and the knowledge. And it actually, I love what you said. I mean, the biggest thing is, yes, we fucking can, is what I'm left with today. And I know that this group is what we're going to do this year as we work together. So thank you for being here. It was, and we will share this recording so people could see your deck too. So thank you so much.
That's
and good luck on your episode 3. So we're we watching Words to Win By. So everybody.
Yeah, I just was going to say as we end this, because there's just a whole bunch of really exciting stuff. If you get to go back and look at season 1 and 2, there is no excuse for us not to feel like we are well informed and that we get to take these nuggets away and use them with your friends and family and everybody else that you encounter the way that you need to in the most authentic way, because we have the tools to do that. So Anat, I will be seeing you on your next webinar.
Yeah. Thank you, Anat. And if you want to share anything in the chat, how people can find your podcast, if it's going to be through your website or people need to sign up, or I don't know, how.
Yeah.
Please.
If you go to the website, and actually we just made live the descriptions of the season episodes, it'll take you to wherever you listen to podcasts. So if that's Spotify or Apple or whatever.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, you have a great day. I know this is going to be a busy weekend. We look forward to working with you, as Fennell said. So thank you for being here. All right, everybody, it's that time. It's wrapping up. I know we went a little over, but it's okay because I could have, again, spent like a couple hours listening, but we want to welcome you here and thank our Patreons for the support. If you want to become a patron, make sure that you click on that link and see how you could support our show. And we're going to go into the after chat, which we like, and I hope you'll stay with us and hold on tight, because in the after chat, we will unmute people. You could take turns talking about, asking questions. And if our guests stay with us, sometimes if they can, that's where we definitely have some great conversations. But I want to thank Denver Riggleman for being here, and also Anat Shenker-Osorio. And we are looking forward to coming in this new year with some great programming coming up. This is just season 4, episode 1. And thank you for our team. And sign up also. We have the Zoom. Robin is featuring a great way to learn about more how to do programming like this. So she'll put that in the chat, email her, and she'll be happy to work with you to be as cool as she is and as good as she is. Right, Fennell? And tell me your one takeaway, and then we're going to fly into the after chat.
Yeah, we're going to fly into the after chat, but I want to thank everyone, even if we didn't get to mention you, for bringing your +1 today. This was a really, really, really important discussion. I want to say thank you to Evelyn and to Courtney. And I also, I really want to say to everybody, I am so excited that we're leaving on such a positive note and we're leaving with such great information. And the one takeaway that I have is freedom, is that as you have your conversations and you think about the most important thing that you can say to help describe democracy, to help describe what the challenges are, it is all about your freedom, and it will mean something authentically different and wonderful to every single person.
Yeah, and I'm loving, because I was looking at some of our +1s, the Butler County Democrats, Courtney Lewis here. I just love looking at like the people that you've mentioned. We're so grateful you brought a friend, and hopefully they'll stay with us and be a friend of the show. All right.